So this is the third video on how to finish up your weaving. As you can see, I have my top bound off. I have the bottom bound off. These might flip-flop, but that's okay. It doesn't really matter for this particular video. And in any case, the right side of my piece, or my up of my piece, all of my tails are going to be on my right-hand side for this video. And the reverse of the piece, they'll show on my left-hand side, or at least on this side. You can also probably pretty easily tell the back because it's the one where all the tails are. So what I'm gonna try to do in as many cases as possible is not just cut and tie, but to actually go in and weave these through the back. So I'm gonna flip my piece over. This is the reverse. I'm gonna try to work from, I'm at least gonna start at the top. We'll see how the rest of this goes. This is gonna be kind of a playing and experimenting task. But I'm gonna start at the top because I know that I need this row that I bound together in a previous video. I know I need that to stay in place no matter what I do. And I don't have very long tails, so I don't have a lot of flexibility in what all I can do. So the first thing I'm gonna do is, I already did part of this step, but I inserted my tail onto a tapestry needle. It was kind of tricky because this was kind of thick, but that's okay. I persevered and I managed. And I'm going to take my needle, I'm not gonna block my camera, and I'm going to stitch it through the first several rows of my weaving. And I can actually do that a couple times. I'm gonna do it a couple times, as many as I think I can get away with. And so you guys can see, this doesn't show on the front. I'm only stitching along a warp. So it's going to hold this into place, but it doesn't show. And then, I gotta rethread this. That's what I get for talking while I'm doing this. Well, I might not be able to, but I do have this big area down here, so I'm gonna catch this and kind of like you would with knitting, I'm gonna just pull this through, and that's gonna be good enough to keep that in place, but you don't see it from the front anywhere. I'm gonna do something really similar over on this end, if I can get this to thread. So sometimes it helps if you come in and you cut separate fibers at an angle. Sometimes it doesn't help. Sometimes it makes the situation worse. Well, I didn't get all of them, but I got most of them, which is okay. And I'm going to do the same thing where again, I'm still working on the reverse. I know I'm not going to have a ton of room to work with this, so I'm actually going to kind of pull 2 stitches at once. And then even though I didn't grab all the fibers, I can still kind of nose that out. And again, I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to catch this and pull it under another stitch. Now, is this super secure? Not really, right? If we were weaving fabric to make some clothing out of, maybe we could do something more secure, but you know, these are weavings that we're going to hang on our wall. They're not going to be clothing, and basically as long as it holds together, you'll be fine. Let's see, where's another good example? Let me go ahead and do this one if I can. This one's a little trickier. I didn't leave myself much of a tail at all, but I think I can manage. And then if I can actually come through one more time, I think I'll be good. Excellent. So again, you see I've wrapped it around the back, but you don't see it on the front at all. So I've done those. You know, if I have extra room, it would be really helpful if I could come back in and then tie a small knot with these two. Let's see if I can do this. I still want to try and be tidy about this, but I also recognize that there's going to be kind of a limit. I don't know. It's just going to take a little bit of play. So there's no way these are coming undone, so I can cut these off, and I'm going to leave a little tail because it's not a very secure knot, but I'm going to call that done for there. For other weft threads that are on the edge, let's take a look. There's another, this is a great example. Let's look at this one. With this one, you guys see this is a piece of muslin. It's a really big chunk. Obviously, this is not worth even trying to fit through the eye of my needle. I'm actually going to take somewhat of a different tack with this one, and I'm not even going to try to thread it back through other things. I'm going to make sure that I am going around my last warp on that row, and I'm actually going to take this and I'm going to use one of my other pieces of fabric, or one of my other tails, and I'm just going to tie it to that. So this is actually a little bit thick, so I'm going to trim this down. I don't need all this extra material. Same thing here. I cut this in a spiral, so it has a little curly Q. I think I can kind of trim a little bit of that off. And then I'm just going to do a square knot, which goes left over right and under, and then right over left and under. And I'm not cinching it too tightly because I don't want to disrupt the tension, but I am gonna, I'm gonna make sure that it's a knot that's tight enough to hold itself into place. And then I can come in, at the end I'll come in and I'll readjust the tension here, but I'm not gonna worry about it immediately. Same thing down here. I used a really big piece of muslin, and I kind of intended to keep weaving with it, but I didn't. So I'm going to come in and trim part of this off. I don't need a ton of excess material back here. It'll help me if I'm tying a knot with a slightly smaller piece. Go right over left and under. Again, I'm not tying it like at a stranglehold. I'm just tying it enough so that it definitely stays together. And then I'm going to do the same. Now these knots are going to stick out a little bit, but I'm kind of okay with that. It gives the piece more texture. And then I'll come in and I'll trim these. For the ends, for my tails that are embroidery floss or any other similar thinner material that I can put back on my needle, I will. And I will do the same thing I was doing up top with that white twine. I will just weave that back into the rest of my piece. So let's see if I can thread this. There we go. So I have a tail here. Let's see. And I will, we all see this warp thread here. I'm just gonna come in, I'm gonna weave it up. I'm not gonna catch this other tail. I'm gonna worry about that later. And then I'm gonna come back this way and come down with the next warp thread. And since I actually have a really long tail left, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna do a couple more stitches. Because I can, basically, and it makes it a little bit more secure. It also fills up if there are any gaps. See, and you can't even tell what I did there, right? The front doesn't look any different. Excellent. And then since I did that through so many different stitches, I don't need to worry about that coming undone. I could tie a single knot down here if I wanted to, but I'm not gonna worry about it. And then I'm just gonna continue on in kind of the same vein here. I won't subject you to watching the whole thing, but basically what I'm trying to do here is just find some order in the chaos. Let me see if there are any sort of trickier ones going on here. For pieces like this, let's take a look at these actually before I let you off the hook. So this one, the weft goes over the warp on the end, which means it's gonna wrap around nicely. When I attach that, it's gonna have this nice even row. You won't see the warp thread. This one down here is gonna be a little bit of a different story. Right? If I just took this and I tucked it back, I'm gonna end up with kind of a, I don't wanna call it ugly, but it's kind of an ugly gap, and it's something I didn't want with my design. So I'm gonna have to kind of troubleshoot through that one. I didn't leave myself enough of a tail here. This is a bad decision on my part. But I think that what I can probably do is just take this end and I'm gonna scoot everything else tighter, and I'm gonna wrap this around one more time. See, I twisted that before, so I can twist it again. And I'm gonna wrap it around that warp thread. So it looks like I completed that row out. And now on the reverse, it's tucked neatly into the back, and I can tie it to something else. I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to tie it to yet because I used up these. I'm going to have to think about that for a few minutes, but I might end up actually just kind of tying this across the board with this one so that I've got some texture here, and then, you know, as this lays flat, it'll kind of get, you know, it'll get a little bit more dimension to it. You know, you guys will encounter different things as you progress through. You might, you know, just kind of embrace this, like, be playful with it, right? See what you can do. As long as the main rule here is, as long as it stays together, you're golden. So tie things to each other. You can tie things to multiple other things. Remember, just don't tie it all too tightly because you don't want your beautiful weaving to kind of gather up and cinch up in odd ways. But as you can tell from even the few things I just did, my weaving's already changing shape somewhat, simply because it's not stretched out. But just be open to things changing, and play around, experiment.